What's going on, Excel fanatics? Verdexes here again. Just wanted to quickly start off by apologizing about the last video. These videos are kind of limited on about 5 minutes, so I got a bit cut off in the last one, so I apologize about that. When I'm going through the Vlookups, I'm going to make this a few-part video, so don't worry about that. But like I said, apologize for kind of the abrupt stop at the end there. If you're jumping into this video, I do recommend watching the part 1, especially if you're not familiar with what a Vlookup is, where we go over that and kind of walk through the different criteria of what makes up that function. So I'm going to just jump into where we last left off, where I was going to show, I did update this to Marcia, but last time we actually had it in as Mary. So you can actually see, this is an example of what happens when you search for a piece of information in a table or a set of data and the answer isn't there. So because this is a small data set, we can clearly tell that Mary isn't there, right? So I'm going to go ahead and type in the formula, Vlookup. We're going to look up Mary, table array. We're just going to use the one column here, C3 through C7. Sticking to the one column again, just one. And the binary answer, either you pick true or false. Always go towards false. And you see that because Mary wasn't in that table, it couldn't find Mary, and it gave you an NA answer. So this is just an example of how Vlookup is actually very useful, and where it helps you clearly identify where a piece of information is missing from a data set, or if you're comparing a couple of different data sets and you want to just find out what could be the missing piece here. Vlookups are super helpful for that when they show an NA there, especially when you're doing some scrap work, things like that. I do want to quickly go through how I keep emphasizing using false. I want to show you what happens. I'm just going to jump into the formula itself when you change it from false to true. So the thing is, before I hit tab or enter right now, I just want to remind everybody, when we found Mary, where we tried to find Mary, it was an NA, indicating that Vlookup couldn't find Mary in that data set. So now, and that was using false, because it was either you find Mary or you don't. So now with true, let's see what the answer that comes up. Billy. So I don't really know off the top of my head. This is something maybe if somebody else knows more information about that, that'd be great if you could share. But the thing is, I'm not really sure what Excel comes up with when you use true. It makes sure that it finds an answer. So it doesn't give you an NA, but it finds an answer within that data set for you to use. So the thing is, why I don't like this is, if I'm using a data set and if I need to make sure that I found Mary per se, if I need to find that information, if I'm using true and it's giving me an answer, I could easily overlook that there's an issue there. So with it giving me an answer, it's just almost easier for you to, completely overlook a problem. So that's why I always say just use false. It's either you found it or you didn't. Oops. Enter. So use an NA. So one thing I want to point out real quick here too, when you're using, especially when you're using false, I know I just recommended this, but I want you to keep this in the back of your head. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to actually just have Marcia's name, because we know Marcia's there, right? So then you see actually how the formula updated as soon as I updated the cell here, right? That's because we were using G5. So whatever is in G5, the Vlookup updated accordingly. So if I go into G5 though and say Marcia's fine, if I do a space here, right, notice that the NA goes off because it couldn't find exactly Marcia, right? The Marcia in this space here doesn't have, in this cell doesn't have a space within the name, right? So when you see an NA and maybe in the back of your head you're like, no, I know Marcia's in that data set, just gives you an extra incentive to kind of look into the cell itself and just make sure that it is what it is. So just kind of a reminder there, just a kind of an extra set of eyes on a cell when you're using this formula. So let's go back and just put that as Mary, just so we know. So this next session is going to be about using multiple columns with Vlookup. That's why I kept emphasizing just